Well, welcome aboard, Seth and Nikolai.
Hey, thanks.
We're just getting started here. I just told everybody else that I'm attempting to record this. So if you're all self-conscious about that or whatever, just be aware of it. If you object strenuously, then, I don't know, come back another day. It's mainly just an experimental recording.
Probably won't work.
Well, yes, it probably won't work, but at least for one thing, you don't hear the echo.
Yeah.
Whether I'm actually recording audio on the other machine there is still somewhat up in the air. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. Dana, welcome.
Dana's here. He said he couldn't get here.
We are almost
Well, I'm probably not going to be able to stay, but...
We are almost at a full room.
Almost.
So I know Doak had a question to get us started. So Doak, I think we've got a full house here. You want to fire your question away?
Yeah, I was looking at a few posts last week. I think some of you guys were posting related to the Oklahoma earthquakes.
Yeah.
And fracking that goes on in some of the older oil fields out there. And I wondered, is it in fact proven that fracking can cause earthquakes?
I'll take a shot at this one and then invite the others to come in. First of all, the process of fracking generates seismic waves. I mean, it's breaking a rock. That's what generates a seismic wave. So does it create earthquakes? Yeah, of course it creates earthquakes. But generally, hydrofracking, like you would be doing in the oil industry, is going to generate really small earthquakes. It can, because of the fluid pressures, trigger quakes on faults that are already stressed. And I think that's really the bigger concern there. It's definitely been shown, and the classic study on this was the U.S. Army's, I don't know whether it was poison gas or whatever it was, their disposal site on the Rocky Mountain Arsenal in Colorado. They used deep injection well to dispose of some of those chemical weapons. And that deep injection well, there's a kind of famous plot, I don't have it handy here, that shows the injection of the deep fluids correlated with earthquake activity. And it's not a one-to-one sort of thing, but you can clearly see that when there are big pulses of injection, you get bigger clusters of quakes. And a number of those quakes were felt quakes. I think it's very fair to say that this Oklahoma quake, the 5.6 that we experienced this past weekend, was not the result of fracking. I don't believe there's been any documented quakes of that size generated by fracking, although some geothermal projects that have attempted to do fracking have generated earthquakes that get up into the very slight damage range. Of course, those projects were shut down pretty quickly thereafter.
Right, I'd heard about that.
But yeah, as far as fracking generating earthquakes, I don't think that's the primary concern from a geological standpoint with fracking. I would think contamination of groundwater is a far more realistic concern. Not that the earthquake concern is unfounded, but it's probably relatively negligible. That would be my, again, non-expert interpretation of it. So anybody else want to weigh in? Harold, you had a post on this.
Well, I just found something new, and which I absolutely love. But I don't know if it's going to show. Yes, you see? They just came up with, this is an earlier paper. This is before the British. This is great.
Yeah, although 1908 is the establishment of the survey.
No, it was in 2011. It's earlier. But I don't know what... they were just coming and saying that, yes, January the 18th, and they're, and they're generally saying that there was a bunch of these earthquakes. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can really just say that because there hasn't been really big ones that a big one can't be induced.
Well,
I think.
I mean, I agree in a theoretical sense. If you're doing, I mean, you can go back to the James Bond plot. If you're doing hydrofracking along the San Andreas Fault, it's entirely possible you're going to trigger the next big earthquake. But you've got to have established stresses there in the ground that you're just pushing over the threshold. In most of the areas where they're considering doing fracking, those stresses should not be anything close to that. But, is it theoretically?
I was looking at them because unlike Arkansas, they hadn't started immediately saying there's no connection with this earthquake and fracking, right? So then I looked up whether they existed because all these geological surveys are leading us, and they do, and they actually came up with this paper, and I think they're going to be difficult for them to totally deny the connection.
I think one thing that we certainly have to do is say it has to be considered on a case-by-case basis, at least before one can point the finger at fracking being the trigger for this particular quake. One has to understand.
It's not fracking per se; it's a deep injection, right? It's got to be.
Well, deep injection clearly is one of. Well, what is fracking? Fracking is basically injection of high-pressure water to cause fractures in the ground, and
but most likely in the shale beds, right? It has to be in the oil beds.
That's what they're aiming for anyway. Unless the hole is poorly cased, it should not get out of those shale beds. But you never know. You never know if you hit an existing fracture or something like that. It's possible. But the fact is, Oklahoma does have, long before fracking, a history of seismic activity. So there's no reason to believe that all of this started just because of the fracking in that area. And while we haven't had one of this magnitude recorded historically, the historical record on Oklahoma quakes is probably only, 50 or 100 years long at most. Well, 1908 was the beginning of the survey. I'm sure they didn't have seismometers at that time. So probably more like 50 years. There are clearly documented cases. The British case, the case in England, is certainly one of them, where there's been a pretty clear correlation between fracking activity and triggered earthquakes. So I'm certainly not denying that possibility.
Anyways, the document is my whole thing about the balkanization of geology into these states, but the whole document's about some counties and stuff, and it was only when I was looking at the when you look at Google Maps that you see that that down here or at the bottom, that's where the paper's written, and up here is where the X is. And
that's the epicenter of the quake.
Yeah. So it actually follows my mega thrusts that go down. It's just interesting.
The mapped the earthquake that occurred over this week occurred on a mapped quake, and to the best of my understanding, that mapped quake had a north-south trend, maybe slightly west of north, south of east of south.
Well, they're completely wrong. But
I'm in no position to make that argument.
The felt area was exactly the same as every other felt area in this area, which was lobate to the northeast. So they can, of course,
be representative of where the population centers are.
No, it's absolutely a common feature of all these eastern earthquakes. So,
Well, look, does that answer your question?
It does indeed. Thank you.
Or begin to answer your question anyway?
I guess the question really should have been unplanned for earthquakes, right? Or
Well, yeah. I mean, that's yeah. It's one of those things in risk assessment where it's not always cut and dry. And in fact, I think in this sort of situation, it's going to be hard to nail down for sure one way or the other in these situations. So I don't know. Time will tell. Anyway,
before about groundwater contamination and so forth, and the oil and gas industry not wanting to own up to what they're actually injecting.
Well, that's certainly one of the issues that's been raised in at least Pennsylvania, I think in New York State as well, and probably down here in Oklahoma as well. Part of that is just the natural tendency of corporations to not want to divulge anything that might later be used in court against them. And part of that may be, proprietary, they want to keep their own secret from their competitors.
Right.
But there's no question that, they could have diffused a whole lot of the concern if they had just been open and straightforward about this. Or at least they might have diffused some of the concern. Some of the concern is, quite frankly, hysterical. But, that's the way it is with these sorts of issues. And congratulations, folks, we've achieved a full chat room. Yay.
Yay, Charles, hello.
First time in the Hangout, I filled it up. Now, I have to admit, I am two of these people. Because my recording is one of the people, and me speaking is another one, but I couldn't figure out any other way to do that. So,
no.
And so, Charles, you're the last one on board, just to be clear to you. I am attempting to record this, so mainly... Well, I'm using Camtasia on a second computer, and I tried this in the past and had all kinds of feedback on the microphones. I think I finally got the sound worked out so that I'm not getting the feedback. On the other hand, I don't know if I'm actually recording sound on the other computer here. So we'll find out in the afternoon.
We'll see, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So now that we got that fracking question out of the way, what's next? Oh, we lost somebody.
Oh. Do we have any new news on El Hero?
Well, she's been bubbling away. The jacuzzi, I don't know if you've been following the coverage,
Love the jacuzzi.
For at least a week, we've been referring to this as the jacuzzi, which is basically all this submarine eruption, the vent producing lots of gases, a stain, of course, in the ocean offshore there. And in the last, I want to say 2 or 3 days, I forget exactly what day it was, the eruption reinvigorated. I want to say this was Saturday, sometime during the day Saturday. It's pretty clear that a new fissure opened up in the same general area as the first fissure, still offshore. Some of that fissure extended closer to La Restinga, which is the port town right on the coast of El Hierro. And then along with the new fissure, new bubbling, new vents, because it's extending into shallower waters, some of this gas venting caused serious perturbation of the sea surface, to the point where it looked like we were on the verge of a Surtsian eruption, which refers back to the eruption in 1963 of Surtsey off the southern Iceland coast, which was a shallow volcanic eruption that basically it's still submarine, but it's spitting out stuff above the ocean surface, which can continue to grow into a brand new island. In the case of Surtsey, it did. And then in other cases, it will shut off before it forms any new island. And there was an example of this in the South Pacific just a year or two ago. If you go to Eruptions blog's coverage, Eric has some really nice video footage from that South Seas eruption with beautiful rooster tails and things like that.
Yeah.
So we're all really crossing our fingers that that's going to be the next thing that happens. In addition to that, there was for the second time, a full evacuation of La Restinga, which is the town only has about a population of 600. I think at most 300 of those folks had actually come back after the last evacuation. And Saturday morning when they ordered this, the initial indication was that it was because of volcanic gases, which is no surprise because the gases coming out of this vent are carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, actually different forms of hydrogen sulfides. So a pretty nasty mix. And with events getting closer to large, there was always the possibility that you would actually have a rift open up on land and cut off the road access, possibly send lava flows down into town. Well, in some ways, we're all kind of rooting for an on-land eruption just so we can finally get some good pictures of it. There was apparently briefly today.
And people say I'm ghoulish.
Yeah, well, there was briefly today a webcam somebody had set up using Ustream. By the time I got to look at it, it was already shut down. And apparently the reviews that I read about it were that there wasn't much to see. But there have been some press photos from up on the flank above La Restinga where you get a good telephoto lens and you can actually see the sea surface boiling and bubbling. There's a really nice thermal photo as well, helicopter-based thermal photo that showed that this was really a pretty nice temporary jacuzzi. I mean, this would have been, aside from the really nasty gases and the fact there was nothing to sit on down to the volcano. It would have been
First
nice.
your little floater, yeah.
And more of these coconuts, too. We refer to them loosely as coconuts because they are white on the inside and black on the outside. They look a little bit like a cracked coconut. And the white interior is apparently a more felsic composition of magma that, by its felsic nature, probably had a lot more gas dissolved in it. As it expanded, as it came toward the surface, it would have expanded, would have been coated by a little bit of basaltic material, and those things are actually light enough to float. And that's why they've been floating around up here, and they look a little bit like coconuts floating on the sea surface. The chemical analyses of that white material have come in with various different compositions. The first analysis was probably not a very reliable one. Suggested it was very high in alumina, Al2O3. I mean, like 75% alumina. There's no rock, no real rock with that composition yet. So we all kind of scratched our heads when that analysis came in. But more recently, there have been suggestions, although I haven't seen the actual chemical analysis, but that it was more of a rhyolite or a trachyte. Rhyolite would be a little bit of a concern because potentially that's a very explosive magma, but in all likelihood, the basalt is just intercepting a very small residual body of rhyolite that was left over from some previous intrusion and bringing little bits of it up to the surface. There's certainly no evidence from the geologic record of El Hierro of any rhyolite eruptions on a large scale. More violent basaltic eruptions, yes, but not rhyolite eruptions. And rhyolite's not unknown from oceanic volcanoes like Iceland, but again, it's usually in small quantities.
So is this more of a plate splitting type volcano or a hot spot?
It's a hot spot. Yeah, it's a hot spot, and it's got a I guess, a kind of wide head because both La Palma and El Hierro. Let me pull up Google Earth here in a second. Attempt to pull it. Well, I got to get out of Hayes, Kansas, and get over to Canary Islands. But yeah, there are basically two different islands that are over the active end of the hotspot, which is actually, I guess, not unlike the Hawaiian hotspot, which has two different volcano tracks. So let me see if I can share this. Just a second. Are you all seeing my picture, by the way?
I'm not seeing your share. I see your.
The share is.
Okay, there's a small one, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Canary Islands. That's Morocco right there. This is Western Sahara on the African mainland. And El Hierro is this volcano down here in the bottom left of the view. La Palma is up here to the north. And those are the two that have had historical activity. So it would appear, the African plate is moving eastward over this hotspot. The trace thus appears to be moving to the west. So there are young volcanoes on all of these islands. So it may also be a more diffuse sort of hotspot where you're getting activity, kind of like the Galapagos, where it's not all in one straight line.
Mm-hmm.
But you're just...
So you mostly expect the Hawaiian-style Uzi volcano there?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
So far, and I haven't tried overlaying any of the satellite images, there's the town of Laristinga. There's a lot of earthquake activity that extends clear across the island, but most of that's fairly deep on the north side of the island, and then there hasn't been any really shallow activity shown. And unlike Hawaii, there's no central vent on El Hierro. There are three rift arms. You can see one clearly going off to the west, one to the northeast, one to the kind of south-southeast. But there's no central vent here at the summit. And in fact, there are scattered cinder cones all over. And when you zoom in on Laristinga, the activity is literally just off here in the shallow waters. It's only a kilometer or two offshore. And if you get some of the news photos, what's that?
Do we know how deep under the water the eruptions are coming out?
There has been some bathymetry done. It's thought to be less than about 100 meters deep, because once you get to that sort of depth, you would expect more same activity. I know Eric Clemente in one of his blog posts today hypothesized 50 to 100 meters. But I think the initial suggestion was maybe 200 meters deep.
Okay.
It's probably built up since then, and it could continue to build, which is a real concern. That's another reason they evacuated Laristinga. If you look at the map here, one of the other things, I should turn on the roads layer here. Oops.
How quickly can a volcano grow? How much can it grow in a short amount of time when it's growing?
That's a good question. It can certainly rise a couple 100 feet within the first couple days, because we've seen examples of that with cinder cones in I think Paracutin in Mexico. Was that volcano that grew in the farmer's field, and that was a matter of days that it grew to a few hundred feet. To go beyond maybe 500 feet, it probably takes a longer time because you're building up the entire base of that volcano as well as the summit. So,
I thought that one was a myth. I couldn't even remember if that was real or a myth.
Oh no, that's very, very real.
Okay.
And for Laristinga, the activity is off here a little bit to the southwest. It looks like if the fracture were to continue to propagate, it would probably propagate west of town. But the problem is, look at this, the only road for access would in all likelihood be cut by any sort of a lava flow.
Oh, yeah.
So, And there's a cinder cone clearly right there. In fact, they've had a number of photo opportunities from that cinder cone or from some of these areas just uphill of that. So it's
the population of what's the town again? Laristinga?
Laristinga was about 600 people before the eruption. My understanding, broad terms, was that about 300 or so evacuated more or less permanently to other families' dwellings elsewhere on the island or maybe elsewhere in Spain. And about 300 had gone back after the first warning was canceled. But it should
Do we
be...
know anything about, this population? Are they, are they mainly, rich vacationers from Europe, or are there some native folks there? Or?
Fishermen. It's actually, the island of El Hierro has actually been relatively undeveloped. Hey, Chris, welcome.
Hey, Chris.
They've actually intentionally kept this island relatively undeveloped to, I guess, maintain a kind of small island feel. It's got the smallest population of any of the Canaries. It has, to my knowledge, no big tourist hotels. And Laristinga is like the most remote village on the island. It's got that nice little port. And so there's a fishing economy there, and also diving. In fact, they were scheduled to have some sort of a underwater photography thing this fall that ended up getting canceled because of the eruption.
Yeah.
Not that we wouldn't mind seeing underwater photographs of it, but I don't
That's
think
safe on there.
Yeah. So it's definitely an ongoing eruption. The news this morning was that the carbon dioxide measurements that they've been taking were at the highest values they've had all through the eruption. So it certainly appears that there's more magma coming. And the earthquake activity has not died down like it did after the first phase of the eruption. So there's still deep earthquake activity, and that suggests that we've still got magma on the move at depth. So while it's clearly in its second act, it's probably going to be going for at least a few more weeks. I haven't read the sidebar there, so.
Cool. Well, I gotta get going. So nice to see you all again, and some of you for the first time. I'll chat with you another time. See you.
Well, it's very nice seeing you too. Take it easy.
Okay.
So, April, did you have any questions you wanted to ask?
I'm been working on the earthquakes and the volcanoes, and I've sometimes wondered when I'm looking at it. I know most of the I'm working with writing about the New Mexico ones, and I know that they're mostly considered to be turning northeast, I believe. And if they're mostly going northeast, the fault's in that area. What would it take anything to? I'm trying to think. So I'm trying to, in the story I'm working on, they're creating where the the seaway reopens again.
Yes.
And
Okay. So you want to be in New Mexico? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's take Google Earth over to New Mexico and let me do what I can to describe
I've
the
been having fun
geology
with
there.
this.
Yep. If the rest of you want to chip in and be my guest. I'll turn off all my Google. We're on Google Earth links. There we go. All right. So, and actually, Chris, since you're here, some of the links that I'm still sharing here are actually interesting, perhaps to you. Let me share this window here. Are you seeing the Google Earth now?
Yep.
Okay. So actually, Chris, you see Air Photo 1, Air Photo 2, Air Photo 3?
Yep. Just
those are the 3 air photos that you would put on your blog. I replied about number 1. I implied that number 2 and 3 were just across the border. I never got around to actually showing you the specific locations because I never got to looking up geology specifically.
Ah, cool.
But it's right up near Grants, New Mexico. So if you want, it's pretty easy to spot. Anyway, I can go dig that out at some point.
Yeah,
But
that sort of area, I think. I just wondered whether they were famous or something because they were quite distinctive from the air.
I've driven Highway 40 there, and so I've driven that maybe twice. I can't say I was paying real close attention to the geology either time. The rocks are kind of Jurassic, Triassic, the red beds in there, and Fort Wingate, which the Wingate sandstone is named for, is actually just west of here. So I think the Wingate sandstone ought to be one of those members, but the New Mexico Geologic Highway map, which I'm holding in my hand, you can't see that at the moment, actually did not list the Wingate Formation over there, so I was a little bit of a head scratcher. Anyway, to come back to your question, April. In New Mexico, can you see New Mexico okay there? In Google Earth?
Yeah.
Okay. The Rio Grande Rift runs basically from Ciudad Juarez down here in the south, up past Albuquerque, and on up into Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was going to open an ocean basin in New Mexico today, that's probably where I would choose to open it.
Yes.
All right. The Basin Range province extends into southwest New Mexico, and that's an area broad spreading, but not so focused. And then the northwest corner is the Colorado Plateau, and that's more or less the same sort of rocks as you see here on the Great Plains, except they're not covered by as many younger sediments. So relatively stable continental area. The volcanism in New Mexico is quite varied. You've got basin range volcanism associated with the areas to the south. There's some of these very young volcanoes, including this beautiful lava flow down here. I don't remember its name. Carrizozo, I suppose.
Yeah, Carrizozo, yeah. I've been looking at a lot of these maps.
Yeah, basically basaltic volcanism, but that's common with the Basin Range. And then you also have up here to the north the Valles Caldera, and that's rhyolitic. And so you have what's referred to as a bimodal volcanism, the far extremes of the compositional range, the basaltic and the felsic. The basaltic volcanoes, of course, would give you your fire fountains like Hawaii and lava flows, but are not generally extremely dangerous. The calderas, the calderas are potentially highly explosive. That's a Yellowstone type volcano.
Yeah.
And then, in addition, you've also got a number of cinder cones. Well, the cinder cones are generally basaltic, but the closest volcano to me here in Kansas is actually up here in northeast New Mexico in the Raton volcanic field. I'm trying to find which one it is. I think this is it right here, Capulan. It's one of these volcanoes. There's a number of them through here. I think the most recent eruption there is about 60,000 years ago, but that's still relatively recent geologically. So that's the basic layout. What else can I tell you more specifically, or anyone else want to join in?
I think the biggest thing is I want to make sure that I'm not saying that the plates are moving in a way that they would actually be moving in the opposite way, because I don't want to write something and then have them say, well, it wouldn't happen that way.
Yeah, the Rio Grande Rift is still active to my knowledge, although I can't think of any recent earthquakes on it.
There are a lot in the Sirocco area, but they're not usually very large.
Socorro, yep.
Yeah,
In fact, there's another magma body down by Socorro too, which is a felsic magma body.
And Magdalena Peak is a big one too.
Yep. I don't know that much more about the New Mexico State Geology. They do have an online survey, and I know they got publications online. I don't know how many of them are free. Arizona's got a much nicer online presence. But
Yeah, that's not the only thing Arizona does right.
well, Arizona's got a tweeting state geologist, so that's something. As far as the most active spreading in the Basin Range province, it's probably over in the Death Valley region. And so if you're going to open up a new ocean basin, I would think that, continuation of the Gulf of California on up into the Death Valley area would be maybe a little bit more geologically plausible. But, if you're doing fiction or speculative stuff, you can change the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So who else have we got down there? Seth and Matt, you're both first-timers here.
Yeah.
Say hi. Tell us who you are.
Well, my name's Seth. I'm a graduate
I think
student.
you're muted.
Oh,
There you go.
Can you hear me?
No, you're fine now. You're fine now.
Okay.
It just took a second to come through.
I'm a graduate student at UNC Charlotte. I'm studying the Mesozoic rift basins and the Piedmont of North Carolina. But I was curious today to talk about PhotoFly software.
Yes.
And I see, unfortunately, it's only PC.
Yeah.
It's not. I wondered if there was anything Mac related that might do something fun like that. But I kind of want to discuss how you stitch those images together.
So they have a couple of tutorial videos that are linked there on the site, and I would recommend watching those things through. There's nothing really special except that I would say you want to get a lot of photos with just a little bit of motion between them rather than just a few photos widely spaced. The algorithm that they're using will not always match things up if it can't immediately identify common points between them. My own experience was that if you do have fairly good coverage all the way around, and at different levels up and down as well, it will do a pretty good job automatically of stitching. It does have the ability to allow you to go in and force stitches after the fact, after it's done its automatic thing, for you to try and force a couple of points by you defining control points. And sometimes that will work wonders. You can send it back after you've defined a few, and it'll figure out all the rest of them. Sometimes it won't even figure out how to link in that one photo. There's definitely a learning curve on this thing. It's not quite as easy as my blog post may have made it look. I think I probably went through about, you saw maybe 30 or 40% of my attempts there. And I had a few others that came out fairly well, but I just didn't share with that group. And then others that were disasters. There's an F-15 parked in Waukene, Kansas, in the town park, and I shot a whole bunch of nice photos around that. I thought I was going to have myself a nice model of an F-15 that I could play around with, and it turned into some ungodly blob that was not recognizable as an airplane. So it does better with simple shapes, relatively simple shapes. I think that's one other thing. Another thing is, and I only found this out by watching the tweet stream on this, it's going to downsample the resolution of your photos before it uploads them to the cloud to stitch them together, if they're anything over 3 megapixels. So it's only upload. So if you go and get your 18 megapixel camera and shoot these really sharp photos expecting a beautiful model is pointless. It's going to downsample all the pictures to 3 megapixels before uploading them. So it actually doesn't make sense to do it with much better camera than, say, an iPhone camera. And in fact, they've used an iPhone camera for some of these in the past. Now, I don't know how they went about uploading and doing the stitch, because you will need a Windows machine. Anyway, that's my experience so far. It's promising, but right now it's just kind of a proof of concept stage.
So what are some of the applications that you can see using these 3D models for?
Well, what I'd really like to be able to do is to give students the model so they can manipulate it on their own. And they actually show off in one of those videos an iPhone app where you actually take the model and you can use the dual touch sort of thing, and you can manipulate that thing and turn it around and see what it looks like from a different angle and all that. That would be spectacular for just giving students the ability to see a fold in 3D or something like that. That was why the fold was the first thing that I did. But right now, I haven't found a way to get my own images into that format, although there is an Android version of that viewing software as well. I also haven't found a way to just simply share a model that I've constructed so that you can see it at least at the same detail that I was seeing it in the original model. Because you could use this software to just, use that as your 3D software. But I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. I'm hopeful that that'll improve, but I don't know. But mainly, it's just a neat thing. The resolution of the models is not good enough to do anything, I think, research related. Like, for example, when I first thought about using photogrammetry to do geology with a gigapan, what I thought about was taking stereo photos and generating a 3D model. And looking at erosion, for example. In western Kansas here, erosion is about the fastest process I've got. And unfortunately, I really have to hang it. Well, I have to wait for somebody to come up with a pickup truck and knock over one of these hoodoos. That would certainly do it. Or I'd have to wait around for 100 years to see any significant erosion. If I lived near a glacier, boy, oh boy, would I be doing this on a glacier, because you could do this, in an afternoon and come back another day later and do another one of these. You could probably estimate volume loss. You could probably do all kinds of neat stuff that way. I think Streambank Erosion might actually be another one where it actually has some potential. But I haven't tried the most detailed of the models that they offer. I've only tried the medium resolution, which is what you saw in the videos there, which is great for those mud cracks. I mean, that mud crack video I thought really worked out well. But, yeah, I don't know how useful this is on a research basis. But it's free, and it's a proof of concept thing on their part, and I'm sure that they have the capability to build this into something more expensive. After all, these are the folks that sell Autodesk, and that's a $3,000 piece of software. They know how to monetize.
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, give it a try, and certainly share the results if you get some, because I'd love to see what somebody else has come up with. I will say another thing. That first fold rock sample that I had, you note in the video, I only showed it on the sides and on the top. If you view that from the bottom, it would have been, there's a hole in the model.
Yeah, you can kind of see it.
Yeah, you can see it if you look closely. I've tried to shoot one where I got the full 360 by 180, the whole spherical thing around an object. It's very tricky to do. There is apparently a way to do it. I have not yet mastered that. I've got what I did is I took a little, or actually, I got it here. No, it's downstairs. Yeah, it's downstairs. A little 3-point tripod, a little flexible tripod, and put the sample on top of that. And then I was able to photograph from above and below, except I had those 3 little things in the way. And actually, you can edit the models after it's created and remove extraneous materials. So, for example, when I stitched the Castle Rock model, it actually had extraneous sky in there, and you can see little bits of sky that remain, but I actually edited out most of the sky. What I didn't have in that case was an aerial photo looking down on it from above. That would have probably eliminated that in the first place. So, yeah, that's what I got.
Right.
Matt,
Yeah.
are you there? Would you like to join in?
Oh, sorry, I'm just busy with a conversation while listening to yours.
Oh, sure. Fair enough.
What are you guys up to, man?
Just talking geology.
Oh, okay.
Chris?
Yeah.
What? Are you recovered from your long travels?
Well, this is like cup of coffee number 6 today or something, which is
Gross.
significantly up on my normal sort of safe intake. So I guess the answer is yes, but only with severe artificial help.
The good news is there's no shortage of caffeine in the United States. So
That is, well, not yet anyway.
It's only a matter of time. Maybe that's the way we actually get people concerned about climate change. Hey, when it wipes out all the coffee growing fields or something.
Coffee and chocolate, don't forget that chocolate's being threatened.
yes, I'm only hypothesizing here, but I noticed that Walmart stopped carrying coffee ice cream. Now, I imagine in the central U.S. coffee ice cream is not nearly as important as it is, say, on the East and West Coast. I grew up on the East Coast, but I'm in definite withdrawal from the lack of coffee ice cream. I'm guessing that's cost of coffee is why they stopped carrying it. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm actually meant to be giving a talk at the undergraduate geology club here a bit later, so I'm desperately trying to wake myself up so I sound enthused.
What will you be talking about?
Well, given the time constraints, I'm actually going to just run an old talk about my PhD thesis in New Zealand, Parsons.
Excellent.
What part of New Zealand?
Well, all of it. But,
Very nice.
I did a lot of work on the east coast of the North Island, sort of studying that deformation there. So
Nice.
it was a pretty good, sweet deal for a PhD student. It's like, yeah, go and spend 6 months in New Zealand, driving around, sampling rocks.
Terrible.
They must have really had to work on you to get you to agree to that.
Well, I mean, it was kind of like the university I did my PhD at. It wasn't like in the best place in the UK, but it was my PhD advice. They said, yeah, I know Southampton is so great, but Zealand, like, yeah, that's a pretty good selling point. So.
Yeah.
Seth, you had mentioned you're working on the Triassic Rift Basins. I grew up in one of those in New Jersey. What sort of work are you doing on them?
Well, right now I'm studying the Wadesboro subbasin, which is one of the southernmost exposed basins, and it's not very well mapped. Over the last maybe 10, 15, 20 years, there's been some test drills, wells drilled out there, and they found a little bit of natural gas and minor amounts of oil, but I guess there's a resurgence.
Uh-oh. I think we lost him. Oh, well. Yeah, as soon as he talks oil and gas, we know where that conversation's going, and bam! The oil company cut him right off.
Yeah.
No proprietary information's getting out through this channel.
Apparently not. We have conspiracy theories and everything.
Well, at least we can laugh at them.
Exactly. No, I just think it makes it more exciting. Speaking of exciting, I'm about to do a post on the Condit Dam demolition. I actually got permission from the gentleman who shot that time lapse that everybody's been sharing around to share it. He turns out to be from Portland, so if any of y'all are in Portland, I think we should buy this man a beer.
Oh, absolutely.
Seriously, gorgeous stuff, and he's so excited. You know, he told me that he's more of a salmon man, but he's been absolutely delighted with all the geologists, you know, kind of getting involved, and I guess he's learning a lot about the geology of that region. He's been getting a lot of contact from both geologists and geomorphologists, so exciting stuff, and I imagine he'll have a lot to say about what it's like to be up there when a dam goes. And they're apparently going to be time-lapsing that for the next several years. They're kind of keeping an eye on how the river changes as it adjusts to no longer having a great big dam in the way.
That would be fascinating to watch.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic.
I presume they'll eventually take the dam superstructure out as well.
I assume so.
Yeah, because I was wondering if maybe you could actually leave the superstructure in place if they've got a big enough hole in the bottom so that it actually acts in some way to do some moderate amount of flood control, but I guess probably won't have a whole lot of structural integrity after they've blasted a hole in the bottom.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
I would think the water would wash a lot of it away.
Well, just the sheer amount of water going through there when they breached it would be as big a flood as it could possibly experience. Mm-hmm. And so, well, short of maybe big boulders coming down and being moved along by a flood. But for a sheer volume of water moving past it, it's never going to see a larger volume than what it saw right there.
Yeah.
Danny, do you know, I've never actually looked for that on a map. Where is the Condit Dam with respect? I know it's Olympic.
It's on the White Salmon River. I would need to look it up because that is actually something that never occurred to me in all of this.
Curious.
To actually look at the map to see where in Washington it was.
One of those things be curious to see. But.
Let's see. Let me see if Condit Dam comes up in here so I can make sure we're in the right place.
Oops, did that work?
Sweet, we've got a soundtrack.
I'm playing a Facebook game. Hold on. It's called Galactic Allies.
Nice.
Not too bad, actually.
Well, it's used for the inspirational music, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone play Final Fantasy?
Nope.
No.
Sorry.
No. You're missing out.
We're just a bunch of sticks in the mud here.
Absolutely. No, I don't play any of those Facebook games.
We just get our kicks watching volcanoes erupt and things like that.
Oh, okay.
I am going to attempt to share my screen.
Give it a whirl.
Thing will stop moving around. There we go. Okay, so there's the dam. And it's trying to get a feel for where it is. It's in Klickitat, and I do not know Washington well enough to be able to tell you precisely where that is.
that the Columbia River?
From the picture, I can see it's kind of at the south kind of bottom.
Yeah, it's right down
Washington.
by the Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Kind of over on the east, yeah. Columbia Rivers, yeah.
Neat.
Yeah, so there we are.
Very nice. Yep.
And I love how it still has the reservoir. I guess their map's going to have to change.
Yeah.
That ain't there no more.
Okay, that'll get fixed eventually.
Yeah. Well, apparently it drained much faster than what they expected. You know, they were wanting to drain it quickly because that dam has built up so much sediment. They had a choice between dredging and just draining quickly and hopefully flushing the sediment out. It drained in an hour.
Yeah, well, that was the amazing thing about those time-lapse videos. It was just like the huge waves of mud, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty impressive. My co-blogger, Anne, was definitely drooling a bit at all of that. I think actually her old PhD supervisor was there. Because he's out in Oregon somewhere, and obviously he's into watershed management and things like that. So, yes, it was an impressive sight, I have to say. Although in the same way, a bit disappointing, because when they said dam removal, I was kind of expecting, huge explosion and sort of the whole thing crumbling. And, I mean, when you think about it, obviously they're not going to do that because it would be a bit of a danger downstream. But,
did you watch it?
It was sort of like, oh, okay, you're not going to blow the whole thing up. Darn.
I know. Hey, at least it wasn't just some dude with a bulldozer on a barge this time.
I wanted first 10 from Navarone.
Exactly.
See, we don't need video games, we have real life.
Yeah,
exactly.
Good point. Pyrotechnics expert and really done a job on it. Did you watch it live?
I need to see that.
I couldn't. I was away from the internet that day, I think, or something. It was one of those things where it's like, darn.
Well, I missed the explosion because the stream was overwhelmed when the explosion happened. So I lost my connection there, but I was able to watch over the course of the next hour a couple of 10, 15-minute stretches of it. So I actually haven't seen the time-lapse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I saw people posting it.
Person who's going to be...
I'll definitely watch it, but what was really neat, I mean, beyond the initial flood coming out and them switching cameras and you could see, different angles on that, was once the lake had drained some and you could begin to see the original topography below there, to watch all the mud and sediment sloughing off in big blops, things like that. Yeah, that was pretty impressive. I mean, it was mud flows in the most unnatural sense.
Well, I found a video of it. I've actually got several videos I'm going to be posting. I found one where it looks for all the world like a lahar, and there's these logs just floating down. And
toward the end of it really looked that way.
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, and I want to get up there so bad and just see it in person and poke around in it.
Video trip.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it's going to be pretty nice.
We haven't nailed down a location for next year's Geo Blogger Rendezvous yet, have we?
I think Callan was wanting somewhere in the Rockies because it's there anyway. Portland or Seattle, of course.
Yeah,
Well, Anne and I have been talking about having a holiday next summer out near you, Diana, because he lived in Oregon for several years, and he likes it rather a lot. So we were thinking maybe going to the Olympic Peninsula or something, which has has the tectonics for me and the mountain river type drainage things for her. Not like a holiday destination based on geological interest or anything like that. I mean, that would be really sad. But,
now, keep in mind, too, they just took out the 2 dams on the Elwha River up there, so you've got your dam removal, too.
Oh, well, there you go, then.
got it all up there.
You bring your salmon gear. Although I suppose they'll probably close them for salmon for a couple of years to let the salmon get rid of salmon.
Like you said, my fishing experience is limited to about 2 hours when I was 13, I think.
Oh, wow.
I come from a country where, there's less places you can do it anyway. It's like sort of you can go to the pond in a local country park if you've got the right permit or something. Literally, you go, and I caught a fish this big, and people go, nah, you're lying. It's far too big. I think sort of the lure is a bit less, but
yeah. No, it would definitely be fantastic to have you guys up here. So, and if you need a place to stay before you head over to the Olympics, I've got a house. It's got a homicidal cat in it, but we can stick her in one of the back rooms.
I tend to get on with cats, but
she's special. Let's just put it that way.
I know a few of those.
Isn't that most cats? I mean, they are like evil incarnates in very cute form.
Well, she's got a little extra pinch of evil. I mean, she's got this very good habit of luring you in with the cute little, hey, rub my tummy and look at me, I'm purring and I love you, and just waits for you to get in that right vulnerable position, and then she will try to remove as much of you as possible. And it's not quite the
So what did you say about you that you have a pet with this mentality? You still have a pet with this mentality.
You remember where she's descended from. She's descended from big cats, presumably. They are a carnivorous sort of animal.
Well, she used to have a father. I just want to point this out, that I was not the only one who raised her, so...
I see. Blame the absent parent, eh?
I fully intend to. He was a vegan. I think that had something to do with it. He was reacting against the lack of meat in the house. Had to get it somewhere. She's a carnivore.
Yep. Exactly.
Anyway, back to geology. I will stop talking about my cat now.
It's fine. I think we pretty much exhausted the topics at hand.
Well, I've got one more if anybody wants to play with it. I just did up my pumpkin to kind of evoke the countertop that Volcanoclast put up today. So if anybody wants to talk about that wonderful photo, see if I can get it to share here. The sharing screen thing is not the speediest, is it?
You just got to remember to click OK after you've got it. So there's the countertop. Yeah, I looked at that countertop, and I am convinced that those inclusions are a northocite.
Okay, spell that out for me.
Well, Gabber or northocite, something like that. The bluish color is from the plagioclase somewhere in the labradorite compositional range. How's that for spelling it? We recorded this, remember? It'll all be okay.
I have to get it posted soon, though, because it's...
Oh, that's okay, don't worry. He called it Gabbro, and I think Gabbro is a good description of it. It's beautiful coronas, though, too. That's the other thing. It was my original tweet about that mentioned the nice coronas, which I don't know what the brown mineral is, but that's certainly an interesting reaction relationship.
Yeah, it's certainly a bit more interesting than your normal granite countertop. So.
Oh, absolutely.
I would bet you they got that at a discount because it was like a...
They probably did.
Yeah, on the other hand, for a geologist, that would be a pretty spectacular one. Aha! Very nice.
See if I can give you a good...
My goodness, that's a big pumpkin kit.
For a leftover throwaway.
I wasn't even going to do it because I didn't have time to go to the store for a pumpkin. I go out to my car last night and I'm passing the dumpsters, and there's this whole pumpkin just sitting there looking at me like, come on, you can't miss the accretionary wedge. I suck at carving, so it had to be painting.
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there we go, and I guess we are going to end up doing a countertop geology for accretionary wedge sometime.
Perhaps. I don't have any to share, but...
Go to Home Depot.
Exactly. That'll be the trick. Is to... Actually, if you included tombstones, then we could begin to get some new things.
I don't see why not.
Yeah. It's an idea.
You can't still be talking, can you?
Well, we live for geology, cats and pumpkins, so don't worry.
But yeah, I had better take off. It was wonderful seeing all of you.
I'm glad this worked out well. It looks like the trolls were scared off just by the fact that they're actually controls now, without actually having to bounce anybody.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. So, yeah, I will see you guys later. Everybody take care, and yeah, let me know if anything fascinating happens.
Great talking to you, Dana.
Take care of Seattle.
We will. Bye.
Later.
Well, I'm just here in time to say goodbye then.
Well, we've done for an hour and 10 minutes, so I guess we could wind down unless anybody else has got any more questions. Oh, we got somebody else joining? Well, any questions, anybody? Any comments?
No.
We'll have to see how your recording turns out.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see if that actually works. If I got the sound along with it, I'm very, very psyched, because that means it's actually all in one recording and I don't have to do a whole lot of editing after the fact. So if that works, yeah, I'm very, very pleased. We'll find out.
Okay, everyone's left.
Yep.
I think we're winding down, so yeah.
Yes, all right.
Thank you, everyone, for helping me answer questions.
My pleasure. And April, don't hesitate to ask again, whatever way you find most effective. Certainly I'll be back here on Thursday for another chat. And in the meantime, Twitter, Google+, whatever works.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Nice talking to you all.
Bye.
Okay.
Have a nice week, and see you all on Thursday.